Hello everybody, welcome to the first video in my C++ programming tutorial. This is Kinjo from Gold Bar Games. Let's get started. The first thing I'm going to want to do is make sure that you guys have Visual Studio installed. So Microsoft has this available on their website. You can download the Community Edition for free. As far as this video goes, I'm going to be using Visual Studio 2017. You can use whatever version you want to use. 2019 came out recently, but maybe you'll be watching this in the future and it'll be a different version. You can use your own editor, whatever you want to do. But for our purposes here, I think Visual Studio is a good introduction to getting started really quickly. So once you install Visual Studio from the Microsoft website, you will be presented with a screen that is similar to this one. And from there, you'll want to go to File, New. Some way or another, you'll get to the screen. You'll get to New Project, and so we're going to make a new project. And basically, I'm just going to explain everything as it pops up here. So here we've got a list of template projects, basically. There's empty, there's Windows Console, Windows Desktop, and there's all sorts of other project types you could download and install on your computer and stuff like that. We're just going to go with empty project because it's important to know what an empty project looks like. And so maybe when you're more advanced, you can look up a template and just get started with the template. But I don't think there's any reason to do anything other than an empty project for right now. I'm going to call this one Hello World. So you can call it whatever you want. Okay. So if you name it the same thing as something else, you'll get that error. I'm just going to call it Hello World 2 because apparently I already have one called Hello World. Not a big deal, but it's important to know. Now in C++, we're going to draw our attention to these two files over here, or these folders over here, header and source. These are important concepts in C++. They may or may not be important in other languages, but we're going to pay attention to the source files folder for right now. We'll do header stuff later, but source is the important thing right now. So we're going to right click and we're going to add a new item to the source folder. And we're going to call this our C++ file is .cpp, and then the header files are .h. We'll talk about classes eventually, but all three of these are really important. We'll take our C++ class and we'll name it main.cpp. Okay. All right, so now we've got our main.cpp, and basically, why do we call it main? The reason is that's just what you need to call it so that the program knows to go there. Although really, the really important thing is to call this function int main. I'll zoom in on the text so you can see it a little bit easier. So again, follow along as I type this. Int space main, left parentheses, right parentheses, and then we're going to do enter. We'll do a curly brace, is what that's called, and we hit enter again. So if you couldn't find that curly brace key, it's right next to the enter key on your keyboard, and you'll want to hold shift to get this to pop up. Like, you'll be using this a lot, so eventually it'll be like second nature to you, but for people who aren't programmers, they probably don't see these keys very often. So so that's int main, and then we're going to return 0. And technically speaking, this is the smallest program you can get to run. So I'm going to make sure to save my progress by clicking on this floppy disk icon up here. And you can also save with the shortcut Control S if you want to do that. I do that all the time. And we're going to run, and we're going to see what happens when we run it. So it ran, it exited with code 0. That's what it says at the bottom here. This is our output log. So this tells us what happened. It does a lot of different stuff here. You can see output, and it tells you what you need to know for a lot of different things, although not much is happening right now. So it exited with code 0, and that means that it was successful, basically. We can change this number here to return different things. If we return 1, it exits with code 1. So you kind of get the idea. Now, this int up here, what does that stand for? That stands for integer. And what that means is main is going to return an integer. So it returns 0, 1, 2, 3. It's not going to return like a fraction or a decimal. So it's expecting that main returns an integer. And so that's what this return statement here does. It says at the end of this program, we're going to bring back this number, and that's the exit code that it returns with. So that's basically an overview for how this works. We've got our return type up here. We've got the name of the function, which in this case has to be main so that the program knows to start here. And then we've got this little space here is for function parameters. We'll get into those later. But for right now, it's totally empty. And then we've got our curly braces that actually tells us what is going on inside the function. Okay. Also important to note, white space doesn't really matter too much, so I could just do a lot of that, make a bunch of enter spaces. I can type space a whole bunch, and it's not going to affect the output of the program at all. It just affects how easily I can read it. Also, really important note, I almost forgot, the semicolon is basically how you end your statements in C++. Not every language uses semicolons, but C++ does require them, so you'll need to use them for almost everything when it comes to like the inside of this function here and some other cases, but basically almost everything you'll have to end it with a semicolon. One other really important detail is you always want to make sure to write your name at the top of your program so you get credit for it. So I'll just write Kinjo up here. The 2 slashes indicate that this is a comment, so this is not going to affect the functionality of the code whatsoever. It's just there for people to read, for humans to read, not for machines to read. So it's essentially treated the same as the white space is, which is to say that it's ignored totally. Now, we'll want to do one more thing before we get started with the actual Hello World program that we're going to write. And we're going to want to go, this is very specific to Visual Studio. If you run this on a command line terminal, you'll won't run into this issue. But since we're doing this in Visual Studio, we're going to want to go to debug and our properties for our project. And we're going to want to go to, see if I can get this right, linker system. Okay, so we go here, and we're going to switch this subsystem to console. We're going to hit apply and OK. So what that's going to do when we run the program again is it'll pop up this window right here. And this will give us a little output window. And then we can press any key to close it, and it closes. So now we know that the program is definitely running. It's just not doing anything whatsoever. Okay? So this is essentially the shortest program you can possibly write. It's not even the Hello World program, which is what people normally start people out with. But I thought this is the absolute simplest thing you can get up and running. So that's what it is for right now. In the next video, I'll show you how to do the Hello World program and explain everything that goes along with it. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.